A topic that you mentioned earlier when you were doing your intro to Profian was around confidential computing, and that is an interesting term, especially here being on Security Podcast. What does that even mean? What do you mean by confidential computing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, I'll say that I'm just here following the definition of the Confidential Computing Consortium. So there's actually a consortium that governs this definition. So I'm not just making this up out of nowhere. And if you want more information, please check out the Confidential Computing Consortium. So the Confidential Computing Consortium and the sub-industry that it represents really represents a new set of technologies that's come in the latest generation of chips. So these are broadly available, for example, in Intel Ice Lake Xeons, as well as AMD Milan in the EPYC line. And these allow you to run a computation, right? So you can run an application where the actual pages of that application, as they're kept in memory, are encrypted by the memory controller using a unique key. This provides several properties. First, it provides confidentiality and integrity of the data that's being run in the application. So if you have sensitive data like healthcare data or financial data or cryptographic keys or any of those kinds of things, right? All of those actually run encrypted in the memory. And even if you get a root level vulnerability, right, or ring 0, if you can actually get the highest privilege level on x86, for example, you still can't see into the data and you can't manipulate the data because it's actually enforced by the hardware. So that's a really big benefit, but it's actually not the biggest benefit. The next benefit that you get is the integrity of the code that's running. This is according to the definition. Now, NARX also aims to provide integrity and confidentiality of the code, but what we mean here is that the code that's actually running runs in a way where you can't tamper with it. So you can't, at runtime, for example, attach a debugger to it and then change the instructions that actually are executing in that code. The third thing is that it provides, and we provide attestation. Attestation is a cryptographic proof from a hardware root of trust that the application is running in this kind of environment. And this is what allows you to run a process on one system and then to be able to connect to it on another system and know that it is running in a tamper-resistant environment. And we think attestation is really the big value point here. If you look, for example, IBM just released the cloud security study, a really great thing. Go Google it; it's fantastic. And they revealed, for example, that according to their study, the average data breach costs $9 million, and many companies have more than one in a single year. We have basically looked at that, and we've pointed out that if you look at all of the examples of these big vulnerabilities that have happened, the big data breaches that have happened, that should be more clear. They all have at their center a root cause, which is that people are accessing data in a way that they're successfully completing the authentication and authorization, but they're doing so, because they have keys, so they can spoof another user. What we're not seeing in the industry is we're not seeing a failure of authentication as designed. It is working as designed, but what we have a failure to do is a failure to scope disclosure of data to a particular operation. And this is precisely the tool that attestation brings to the playbook of everyone out there. So the example I like to give here is if you're a customer and you go to a bank and you say, "Hey, what is the balance of account 1234?" They're not just going to tell you that information. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to say, "Hey, who are you?" And they want to see some ID first, right? That's your authentication. And then they're going to look and see if you actually own that account and if you're privileged to have that information. And you can they see that you own the account, and therefore they are willing to give you information. They tell you what the balance of that account is. So you've just gone through an authorization and an authentication step. But what's interesting is that now that data is unscoped. They've given you that information, but what you can do with that information is absolutely unlimited. You could tell your friends, you could announce it, you could send it to a foreign power if you wanted to. So what you can actually do with that data is unscoped. And this is roughly the way that we treat all data systems on the internet today. And this is the thing that fundamentally needs to change if we're going to actually make a significant dent. By the way, the inflation in terms of cost for data breaches right now is, I think it was something like 22% over the last 2 years. So that's the cost of data breaches going up, right? And so this is a pretty fundamental problem. And the way we solve this with attestation is that rather than asking who gets access to the code and then letting them do whatever they want with that, we actually say, what are you going to do with that data? So and this is really important because in computing systems, there are no humans directly involved. Even if you're sitting at the computer typing, there's software in between you and that remote party, right? So what we really have is code talking to code. And when we disclose data, we need to ask not who owns that code or who is the host operating that code. What we really need to be asking is, what do you plan to do with that information? And we need to be able to scope how we can use, or when we disclose data, we want to be able to scope how it's used. And this is the main thing that's actually going to cause a big decrease in security cost in the industry.